Welcome to today's episode. Let's start with a few questions for you to think about. Do you find it easy to have conversations in English? What do you usually talk about when meeting new people? How do you keep a conversation going when you're unsure what to say next? In this episode, we're diving into conversational English, an essential skill for building confidence and fluency in everyday situations. Whether you're chatting with a friend, meeting someone new, or having a professional discussion, knowing how to navigate conversations is key. Let's start with some common expressions to help you begin a conversation. When you meet someone, you might say, "Hi, how's it going?" or "Nice to meet you." These simple greetings can set a friendly tone. If you want to learn more about the person, try asking, "Where are you from?" or "What do you do for work or study?" These questions are great for starting small talk and showing interest in the other person. Once a conversation starts, keeping it flowing is important. One way to do this is by asking follow-up questions. For example, if someone says, "I'm from Italy," you could reply, "Oh, that's interesting. What's your favorite thing about living there?" Or if they mention their job, you can ask, "What do you enjoy most about your work?" And this shows that you're paying attention and encourages them to share more. Have you ever been in a conversation where you didn't know what to say next? Don't worry, it happens to everyone. One helpful tip is to share your own experiences or opinions. For instance, if someone mentions they like traveling, you could say, "I love traveling too. My favorite trip was to the mountains last year." Have you ever been to the mountains? Sharing your own story makes the conversation more engaging and personal. Another important part of conversational English is reacting naturally. When someone tells you something exciting, you can say, "Wow, that's amazing," or "That sounds great." If they share a problem, you could say, "I'm sorry to hear that," or "That must be tough." These reactions show empathy and help build a connection. What about ending a conversation politely? This can be just as important as starting one. You might say, "It was great talking to you," or "I really enjoyed our chat. Let's talk again soon." These phrases leave a positive impression and show that you value the interaction. Learning conversational English is not just about using the right words. It's also about understanding tone and body language. For example, smiling and making eye contact can make you seem approachable and friendly. Your tone of voice can also change the meaning of your words. Saying "that's nice" with enthusiasm sounds positive, but saying it in a flat tone might seem uninterested. Have you ever tried practicing conversations with a friend or a language partner? Role-playing common situations like ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions can help you gain confidence. The more you practice, the more natural your conversations will feel. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes. No one expects you to be perfect, especially if English is not your first language. The most important thing is to keep trying and to focus on communicating your ideas. Over time, you'll find that conversations become easier and more enjoyable. Now let's talk about building your vocabulary for conversational English. Learning phrases like, "That's a good question," "I see what you mean," and "Could you explain that a bit more?" can make your conversation smoother and more interactive. These phrases show that you're engaged and interested in what the other person is saying. How do you feel about conversations that switch topics? For example, you might start talking about hobbies and then move on to travel or food. Being able to transition smoothly is another great skill. You could say, "Speaking of travel, have you ever been to a tropical island?" Or "That reminds me of something interesting I read recently." These transitions keep the conversation dynamic and engaging. By practicing these skills, you'll become more confident in your ability to hold conversations in English. Remember, it's not just about the words. It's about listening, responding, and connecting with the person you're speaking to. Let's dive even deeper into how we can improve conversational English. A major part of having smooth conversations is staying relaxed. Sometimes when we speak in a second language, it's easy to get nervous or worry about making mistakes. But remember, every conversation is a chance to learn and improve. So when you're practicing, try to stay calm and focus on expressing your ideas clearly, even if you need to pause to think for a moment. A good way to stay relaxed is by listening carefully to what the other person says. Active listening is an essential skill in conversation. This means not just hearing the words, but really understanding the meaning behind them. For example, if someone says, "I've been really busy with work lately," instead of just nodding, you might respond with something like, "That sounds tough. How do you manage to find time for yourself?" This shows you're paying attention and makes the other person feel heard. When it comes to continuing the conversation, It's also helpful to give a bit of feedback on what the person has said. This doesn't mean repeating everything, but adding something related to what they shared. For instance, if someone mentions that they recently went hiking, you could say, "Hiking sounds fun. I went last summer and it was amazing to be surrounded by nature. Where did you go hiking?" This keeps the conversation moving and allows you to share your own experiences, making it more interactive. Another thing to keep in mind is the importance of asking open-ended questions. These types of questions invite more than just a yes or no answer and encourage the person to share more. Instead of asking, "Do you like sports?" try asking, "What kind of sports do you enjoy and why?" This way, you get to know more about the person's interests and you can keep the conversation going longer. Open-ended questions help make the conversation richer and more enjoyable. Sometimes in conversations, you'll need to give opinions, and that's another area where you can practice your English. Giving your opinion is a great way to keep the conversation going, but it's important to do it politely. You might say, "I think that's a great idea, but I personally prefer something a little different." Or, "In my opinion, it's better to..." These phrases allow you to share your views without sounding too direct or confrontational. They help create a more balanced and friendly atmosphere in the conversation. Another aspect of conversational English is understanding the flow of the conversation. Conversations can go in different directions, and that's perfectly fine. One moment you might be talking about movies, and the next you're talking about food or family. The ability to transition smoothly between topics is important. You might say, "That reminds me of something else I wanted to ask you about." Or, "Speaking of that, I've been wondering..." These transitions help keep the conversation lively and prevent awkward silences. At times, you might not understand everything that's being said, and that's okay. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. You can politely say, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Or, "I didn't catch that part. Could you explain it again?" Asking for clarification is a great way to show that you're engaged and want to understand. Most people appreciate this because it shows you care about the conversation. It's also important to keep your sentences clear and not too complicated. This is especially helpful for beginners. Instead of using long, complex sentences, try to express your thoughts in a simple way. For example, instead of saying, "I would really appreciate it if you could share more detailed information about your recent vacation to Italy, as I'm very interested in that region and would love to visit it myself," you can say, "I'd love to hear about your trip to Italy. What was your favorite part?" This way, you keep the conversation easy to follow and natural. Small talk is a key part of conversational English. It's light, casual conversation that doesn't dive into deep topics, but it's perfect for meeting new people or warming up before a bigger discussion. For instance, when you meet someone new, asking about their day or weekend plans is a great way to start. You could ask, "What did you do this weekend?" Or, "How's your day going so far?" These simple questions help break the ice and allow the other person to talk about themselves, which is something everyone loves to do. Building confidence in your speaking skills also means accepting that you might make mistakes. In fact, making mistakes is part of the learning process, and it's something we all experience. If you don't know a word or phrase, don't be afraid to ask for help or use simpler language. For example, if you forget a word, you might say, "I don't know the word for that, but it's like..." Describe it. Most people will appreciate your effort and be patient with you. One tip is to practice conversations every day. You can practice with a friend, a language partner, or even by yourself. Try talking to your mirror or use language exchange apps where you can speak with native speakers. The more you practice, the more confident and fluent you'll become. And remember, conversations don't have to be perfect. The more relaxed and natural you are, the easier it will be to keep the conversation going. When you're just starting, focus on the basics: greetings, introductions, and simple questions. As you get more comfortable, you can expand your vocabulary and talk about more complex topics like your hobbies, future plans, and opinions. Over time, you'll be able to express yourself with more ease and confidence. Now let's think about how to be a good listener as well as a good speaker. In a conversation, it's just as important to listen carefully as it is to speak clearly. When the other person is talking, make sure you're paying attention and not thinking about what you're going to say next. Nodding, maintaining eye contact, and giving small verbal cues like "I see" or "That's interesting" show that you're actively listening. Active listening is crucial for building connections with others and making your conversations more meaningful. Let's dive even deeper into improving conversational English skills. At its core, having a good conversation is about connection. It's about exchanging ideas, sharing experiences, and learning from each other. To achieve this, we need to develop both confidence and competence in using the language. Let's explore some strategies to elevate your conversational abilities, whether you're just starting out or looking to refine your skills further. A crucial element in building conversational English is expanding your vocabulary. The broader your vocabulary, the easier it will be to express your thoughts. But here's the thing. Focus on learning words and phrases that are practical and relevant to your daily life. For example, if you often talk about hobbies, learn vocabulary related to your favorite activities. Instead of memorizing long lists of random words, try to learn phrases that you can immediately use in conversations. For instance, instead of just knowing the word travel, learn phrases like, I'd love to travel to, or what's the best place you've traveled to? This way, your learning is purposeful and directly applicable. Another effective method is to learn common idioms and expressions. These are phrases native speakers use all the time, and understanding them can make your conversation sound more natural. For example, instead of saying, I'm very tired, you can say, I'm worn out. Or instead of saying, I agree with you, you might say, we're on the same page. These small changes can make your speech sound more fluent and engaging. Pronunciation is another key area to focus on. When we communicate, it's not just about what we say, but how we say it. Practicing clear pronunciation will make your conversation smoother and more effective. To improve, listen closely to how native speakers pronounce words. Notice their rhythm, intonation, and how they stress certain syllables. Then, try to mimic them. You can use online tools or apps to listen to native speakers and repeat after them. Even watching movies or TV shows in English and pausing to repeat lines can be a fun and effective way to practice. Now, let's talk about maintaining a conversation. One way to keep the dialogue flowing is by using follow-up questions. Let's say someone tells you, I just got back from a trip to Spain. Instead of responding with a simple, that's nice, you could ask, wow, Spain. What was your favorite part of the trip? Or, what cities did you visit? These follow-up questions show that you're interested and give the other person a chance to share more. It also takes the pressure off you because they'll be doing more of the talking. Another way to keep a conversation alive is by sharing a little about yourself. For example, if someone mentions that they enjoy playing soccer, you might respond with, I've always wanted to try soccer. I usually play basketball, but soccer looks so exciting. How often do you play? By sharing something about yourself, you make the conversation more interactive and create a sense of mutual exchange. Now, let's address a common challenge: what to do when you're unsure about what to say. This can happen to anyone, especially when speaking a second language. The key is to stay calm and use simple strategies to buy yourself time. You could say, that's an interesting point. Let me think about that for a moment. Or you can rephrase what the other person said, giving yourself a moment to collect your thoughts. For example, if someone says, I find history fascinating, you could respond with, history is such a rich subject. What period do you enjoy studying the most? To truly excel in conversational English, you need to practice regularly. But here's a tip. Don't just practice in a structured way, like in a classroom. Try to engage in real-life conversations whenever possible. Whether it's chatting with a colleague, joining a group discussion, or even talking to yourself while cooking dinner, every bit of practice helps. If you don't have someone to practice with, consider joining online language exchange groups. These communities are full of people who are also looking to improve their language skills, and they offer a supportive environment for practice. Let's also talk about body language. Did you know that communication isn't just about words? Nonverbal cues like gestures, facial expressions, and posture play a huge role in how your message is received. For example, maintaining good eye contact shows that you're engaged in the conversation. Smiling can make you appear more friendly and approachable. Even the way you nod your head can indicate that you're listening and agreeing with what's being said. When it comes to tone, think about how your voice conveys your emotions. A monotone voice can make you sound uninterested, while a varied tone shows enthusiasm. Practice speaking with energy and emotion, especially when you're talking about topics you're passionate about. This makes your conversation more lively and enjoyable for both you and the person you're speaking with. Mistakes are inevitable when learning a new language, and that's okay. Instead of feeling embarrassed, view them as opportunities to learn. For instance, if someone corrects your grammar, Don't be discouraged. Thank them for helping you improve. Remember, the goal is progress, not perfection. Every mistake you make brings you one step closer to fluency. Lastly, let's consider the cultural aspect of conversational English. Language isn't just about words, it's also about understanding the culture behind them. For example, in some cultures, it's common to be very direct, while in others, people tend to be more indirect to avoid confrontation. Learning about these cultural nuances can help you navigate conversations more effectively. For instance, understanding that Americans often say, "How's it going?" as a casual greeting, even when they don't expect a detailed response, can save you from confusion. In summary, improving your conversational English is a journey that involves vocabulary building, practicing pronunciation, mastering small talk, and understanding cultural nuances. With consistent effort and a positive attitude, you'll find yourself becoming more confident and fluent in no time. Let's take a deeper dive into some more advanced techniques for mastering conversational English. We've covered the basics, but to reach fluency, you'll need to step up your game. One effective way to do this is by practicing active listening. Active listening means truly focusing on what the other person is saying, without planning your response while they're talking. It's about understanding the speaker's words, emotions, and intentions. This is a skill that goes beyond just hearing words. It involves thinking critically and responding thoughtfully. When you listen actively, you're able to ask better questions, provide more insightful answers, and connect with the speaker on a deeper level. Active listening is essential for any great conversation, as it shows respect and interest in the other person's point of view. To practice active listening, try repeating back what the speaker has said, but in your own words. This is called paraphrasing, and it helps confirm your understanding. For example, if someone says, "I've been feeling tired lately because of my new job," you could respond with, "It sounds like your new job is really demanding. I can see why you'd feel tired." This shows that you've been paying attention and makes the conversation more engaging. Another way to improve conversational skills is by focusing on your fluency. Fluency refers to your ability to speak smoothly and without hesitation, even when you don't know the exact word for something. To practice fluency, try speaking about a topic for a set period of time, like 2 minutes or 5 minutes without stopping. You can start by choosing simple topics, such as, "What did you do this weekend?" or "What's your favorite food?" This exercise helps you think on your feet, and it's okay if you make mistakes along the way. Fluency is about communication, not perfection. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become with expressing yourself quickly and clearly. One of the biggest hurdles for many learners is dealing with nerves or anxiety when speaking English. It's normal to feel a little anxious when speaking a second language, but don't let that hold you back. One way to build confidence is by practicing in a safe and supportive environment. You can start by speaking with close friends or family members who won't judge you. As you get more comfortable, try to engage in conversations with strangers or even online language exchange partners. Remember, making mistakes is a part of the learning process. Every time you speak, you're getting better, and with each conversation, your confidence will grow. It's also important to learn how to manage conversations effectively. For example, if you feel like the conversation is running out of steam, you can introduce a new topic or ask a follow-up question. Here's an example. If you're talking about movies and the conversation starts to slow down, you could ask, "What's the last movie you saw in the theater?" Or, "Do you have a favorite actor or actress?" These questions help you keep the conversation flowing, and they also show that you're genuinely interested in learning more about the other person's experiences. Another critical aspect of improving your conversational English is developing your ability to use transitions effectively. Transitions are words or phrases that help connect your ideas smoothly, making your conversations more coherent and easier for others to follow. For example, when you want to add more information, you can use phrases like "in addition," "furthermore," or "not only that." When presenting contrasting ideas, you might say, "However," "on the other hand," or "that being said." Transitions act as bridges between your sentences, helping to guide your listener through your thoughts seamlessly. Practicing these phrases in context can make your speech more polished and professional. Additionally, understanding and practicing idiomatic expressions can greatly enhance your ability to engage in natural conversations. Idioms are phrases where the meaning isn't immediately clear from the individual words, such as "break the ice," which means to start a conversation in a relaxed way, or "hit the nail on the head," meaning to describe something perfectly. Using idioms correctly can make your English sound more fluent and native-like. Start by learning a few common idioms and practicing them in sentences. For instance, if someone asks how your weekend was, you might say, "It was a blast. I got to spend time with my friends." This not only shows your understanding of casual expressions, but also makes the conversation more lively and relatable. Learning how to respond appropriately to different tones and situations is another essential skill. Conversations can be formal, like in a business meeting, or informal, like when chatting with friends. Being able to adapt your language and tone accordingly is crucial. For formal situations, use polite language and avoid slang. For example, instead of saying, "What's up?" you might say, "How are you doing today?" On the other hand, in informal settings, it's perfectly fine to use more casual language. By practicing in both formal and informal contexts, you can develop the flexibility to navigate any conversational situation with ease. Building a strong vocabulary is equally important. To express yourself clearly, you need to have a wide range of words at your disposal. One effective way to expand your vocabulary is by learning words in context rather than in isolation. For example, instead of just memorizing the word excited, learn phrases like, "I'm excited about my new job," or "She was excited to meet her favorite author." This helps you understand how the word is used in real-life situations. Additionally, try to learn synonyms and related words. For instance, along with excited, you could learn thrilled, overjoyed, and ecstatic. This will allow you to express yourself more vividly and precisely. Pronunciation is another critical area to focus on. Even if your vocabulary and grammar are excellent, unclear pronunciation can make it difficult for others to understand you. To improve your pronunciation, try practicing with tongue twisters, as they help train your mouth and tongue to produce sounds more accurately. For instance, "She sells seashells by the seashore" can help you practice the S and sh sounds. Additionally, listen to native speakers and mimic their pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. Record yourself speaking and compare it to native speakers to identify areas for improvement. With consistent practice, you'll notice a significant improvement in your clarity and confidence. Another valuable strategy is to learn how to use questions effectively in conversations. Asking good questions shows that you're interested in the other person and keeps the dialogue going. There are different types of questions you can use. Open-ended questions like, "What do you think about the new park in our neighborhood?" encourage the other person to share their thoughts in detail. Closed-ended questions like, "Do you like coffee?" are useful when you want a simple yes or no answer. Balancing these two types of questions can help you steer the conversation in a natural and engaging way. Understanding body language and nonverbal cues is also essential for successful communication. Sometimes what you don't say speaks louder than words. For example, maintaining eye contact shows that you're paying attention, while nodding occasionally indicates agreement or understanding. Smiling can help create a positive atmosphere, making the other person feel comfortable. On the other hand, crossing your arms or avoiding eye contact might give the impression that you're not interested. Practice being aware of your own body language and observing others to better understand the unspoken elements of communication. Another way to improve is by practicing storytelling. People love hearing stories, and being able to share your own experiences in an engaging way is a great skill. When telling a story, remember to include details that bring it to life. For example, instead of saying, "I went to a park and it was nice," you could say, "Last weekend I visited this beautiful park with tall, green trees and a sparkling lake. I spent hours walking along the trails, listening to the birds and enjoying the fresh air." Adding vivid descriptions and emotions makes your story more interesting and helps the listener feel connected to your experience. If you want to take your conversational skills to the next level, consider joining a language exchange group or finding a speaking partner online. These platforms give you the chance to practice with people from different backgrounds, exposing you to various accents and conversational styles. Additionally, you'll learn about different cultures, which can make your conversations more meaningful and insightful. When practicing with a partner, focus on having natural, flowing conversations rather than just practicing set phrases. This will prepare you for real-life situations where conversations don't always follow a predictable script. Lastly, it's important to reflect on your progress and identify areas for improvement. After each conversation, ask yourself questions like, "Did I understand the other person clearly? Was I able to express my thoughts effectively? And What could I do better next time? Taking the time to reflect will help you pinpoint your strengths and weaknesses, allowing you to focus your practice on areas that need more attention. Remember, the journey to fluency is a marathon, not a sprint. Celebrate your successes no matter how small, and keep pushing yourself to reach new heights. Another crucial step in mastering conversational English is developing your ability to actively listen during discussions. Active listening means more than just hearing words. It involves paying close attention to the speaker's tone, emotions, and nonverbal cues. When someone is sharing their thoughts, nodding occasionally or saying phrases like, "I see," "that makes sense," or "tell me more," can show that you are engaged in the conversation. Active listening not only helps you understand the message better, but also encourages the other person to feel valued and respected. This skill can be especially useful in professional settings, where showing attentiveness can create a strong impression. An essential practice for improving conversational skills is shadowing. Shadowing involves listening to a native speaker and trying to repeat what they say as closely as possible in terms of pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. For example, you can choose a short audio clip, play a sentence, pause it, and then repeat it exactly as you heard it. Doing this regularly helps you internalize natural speech patterns and improve your ability to sound fluent. Pair this with recording your voice and comparing it to the original, as it allows you to identify areas where you can make adjustments to match native pronunciation more closely. Another effective method is learning how to paraphrase. Paraphrasing involves restating someone's ideas in your own words, which shows understanding and keeps the conversation flowing. For instance, if someone says, "I had a rough day at work because my boss gave me extra tasks at the last minute," you could respond by saying, "It sounds like your boss really put you under pressure today with those last-minute tasks." Paraphrasing not only demonstrates that you are paying attention, but also allows you to confirm that you understood the speaker correctly, which is an important aspect of effective communication. Building your cultural awareness can also enhance your conversational skills. Conversations are not just about language, but also about understanding the context and cultural norms. For example, in some cultures, it's common to make small talk before getting to the main topic, while in others, people prefer to dive straight into business discussions. Being aware of these differences can help you adjust your approach and avoid potential misunderstandings. Reading about different cultures, watching international films, or joining multicultural groups can provide valuable insights and improve your ability to connect with people from diverse backgrounds. Focusing on improving your fluency through repetition is another valuable strategy. The more you practice, the more confident and natural your speech will become. For example, if you struggle to talk about your daily routine, write down a few key points and practice speaking about them multiple times. Each time, try to add more details or use different expressions to describe the same ideas. Over time, this will help you become more comfortable with the topic and prepare you to discuss it effortlessly in real conversations. Another way to enhance your conversational abilities is by learning how to manage pauses effectively. Pauses are a natural part of speech, and knowing how to use them can make your conversations more impactful. For example, pausing briefly before answering a question gives you time to think and shows that you are considering your response carefully. Similarly, pausing after making an important point allows the listener to absorb what you've said. Practice speaking slowly and deliberately, focusing on where to insert pauses to make your speech sound more thoughtful and confident. Developing your ability to express emotions through language is another key aspect of conversational English. For example, instead of simply saying, "I'm happy," you can use more descriptive phrases like, "I'm over the moon," "I'm thrilled," or "I couldn't be happier." Similarly, instead of saying, "I'm sad," you could say, "I feel down," "I'm heartbroken," or "I'm feeling blue." Using a variety of expressions not only makes your speech more interesting, but also helps you convey your feelings more accurately. Practicing these expressions in different scenarios can help you become more comfortable using them in real conversations. Understanding and using idioms is a great way to enhance your conversational English. Idioms are expressions that have a meaning different from the literal interpretation of the words. For example, the phrase "break the ice" doesn't mean physically breaking ice. Instead, it means starting a conversation in a way that makes everyone feel more comfortable. Imagine this scenario. You're at a party where you don't know anyone. Instead of standing in the corner, you could approach someone and say, "It's such a lovely gathering. How do you know the host?" That's an example of breaking the ice by initiating a friendly and engaging conversation. Using idioms like this can help make your conversations more natural and relatable. Another popular idiom is a piece of cake, which means something is very easy to do. Imagine helping a friend who is nervous about preparing a dish for a potluck dinner. You could encourage them by saying, "Don't worry, making pasta is a piece of cake. I can even share my favorite recipe with you." Incorporating idioms like this into your speech shows that you understand the cultural nuances of the language, making your communication more engaging and authentic. Storytelling is another powerful tool for mastering conversational English. Telling stories can make conversations more vivid and memorable. For example, if someone asks about your favorite travel experience, instead of simply saying, "I loved visiting Italy," you could share a story about a specific moment. You might say, "When I visited Rome, I got lost looking for the Colosseum. Instead of panicking, I asked a local for directions in my best attempt at Italian. The man not only gave me directions, but also walked me halfway there, sharing stories about the city along the way. It was such a heartwarming experience and made my trip unforgettable." Stories like this not only captivate your listener, but also provide an opportunity to practice speaking in full sentences while adding depth to your conversations. Another example of storytelling can come from everyday life. Let's say you're talking about learning something new. Instead of saying, "I learned how to bake," you could turn it into a story. "Last weekend, I decided to bake a cake for the first time. I followed the recipe carefully, but when it was time to mix the ingredients, I accidentally used salt instead of sugar. I didn't realize it until I tasted the batter. It was a funny mistake, and I laughed so hard. But in the end, I started over, and the cake turned out delicious." Sharing relatable, humorous, or even challenging experiences makes conversations richer and more engaging. Active listening is another essential skill for great conversations. When someone is speaking, showing that you are listening can build rapport and encourage them to open up. One way to do this is by using phrases like, "That's so interesting," or "I never thought about it that way before." For instance, if someone tells you about a new hobby they've taken up, like gardening, you could respond, "Wow, gardening sounds so rewarding. What kind of plants do you grow?" This not only shows your interest, but also keeps the conversation flowing. Short phrases are also powerful for keeping conversations alive. Expressions like "I see," "Tell me more," or "That's amazing" are easy to remember and can be used in almost any situation. For example, if a friend is explaining their new job, you might say, "That's amazing. What do you enjoy most about it?" This kind of response shows enthusiasm and prompts them to continue sharing. Lastly, practice is key. To improve your conversational English, practice speaking with friends, watching English TV shows, or even joining language exchange programs. One learner I knew practiced English by joining a local hiking group. During their hikes, they talked about the trails, shared stories about their favorite outdoor activities, and learned many new phrases, like "hit the trail" and "breathtaking view." This combination of conversation and real-life experience helped them gain confidence and vocabulary. Another important aspect of learning conversational English is understanding cultural contexts and adapting your language to suit them. Let's consider the example of greetings. In some cultures, a formal "good morning" or "good afternoon" is the standard, while in others, a casual "hey, how's it going" might be more common. If you're traveling to the United States, for example, you might notice people often greet each other with "what's up?" or "how are you doing today?" Understanding that these greetings are not literal questions, but friendly ways to say hello can help you respond naturally. A good reply might be, "Not much. How about you?" Or, "I'm good. Thanks for asking." To illustrate this, let's think about a scenario where you meet someone at a coffee shop. Suppose you're waiting in line, and the person next to you strikes up a conversation by saying, "This line is taking forever, isn't it?" This is a common way people in English-speaking countries start conversations. A simple and effective response could be, "Yes, it is, but I think the coffee will be worth it." You could then add, "Do you come here often?" This kind of exchange not only helps you practice conversational skills, but also opens the door to a longer, engaging discussion. Another way to enhance your conversational skills is by using phrases that express agreement, disagreement, or curiosity. Let's look at a short story. Imagine you're discussing movies with a friend. Your friend says, "I really loved the new superhero movie." Instead of simply replying, "Me too," you could say, "I agree, it was amazing. I especially liked the way they developed the main character. What about you? What was your favorite part?" This kind of response shows that you're actively participating in the conversation and encourages the other person to share more. Similarly, if you don't agree, you can politely share your opinion. For instance, you might respond, "I actually felt the movie was a bit too long, but the special effects were incredible. What did you think about the action scenes?" This approach keeps the conversation positive and encourages mutual exchange of ideas. Now, let's explore a short story about using curiosity in conversations. Suppose you're at a book club meeting and someone mentions that they're reading a historical novel. You could respond with, "That sounds fascinating. What period of history does it cover?" This question not only shows your interest but also keeps the conversation engaging. As the person shares more about the book, you could add, "I've always been curious about that era. Do you have a favorite historical figure from the book?" This way, you're not only practicing English but also deepening the connection with the person you're speaking to. Learning to use phrases for clarification is another skill that can boost your confidence in conversations. Imagine you're at a restaurant and the waiter explains the specials using some words you don't understand. Instead of staying silent, you could say, "Could you explain what that dish is made of?" Or, "I'm not familiar with that term. Could you tell me more?" This not only helps you understand better, but also demonstrates your willingness to engage and learn. Here's another scenario. Suppose you're having a conversation with someone who speaks very quickly. You could politely ask, "I'm sorry, could you repeat that a bit more slowly?" Or, "Could you please say that again? I want to make sure I understand." These phrases show that you value the conversation and are committed to understanding it fully. To tie all these techniques together, let's think about attending a networking event. Picture yourself walking into a room filled with people. You decide to approach a group of individuals who are discussing travel. One person says, "I recently visited Japan and it was incredible." Instead of saying, "That's cool," you could respond, "Wow, Japan must have been amazing. What were some of your favorite places to visit?" As they answer, you can use active listening phrases like, "That's interesting," or "I'd love to hear more about that." If they mention something unfamiliar, you could ask, "What's that like?" Or, "Could you tell me more about it?" This strategy keeps the conversation flowing and helps you learn new words and cultural insights. Absolutely. Let's explore more scenarios and conversational tools to enrich your English speaking experience. Conversations are all about connecting with others, and one of the best ways to connect is through shared experiences and storytelling. People love stories, especially when they're personal and relatable. So, let's dive into how stories can be used to spark meaningful conversations and improve your English. Imagine you're at a family gathering, and someone starts talking about their favorite childhood memory. Instead of just listening, you can join in by sharing your own story. For instance, you could say, "That reminds me of the time my friends and I built a treehouse in the backyard. It wasn't very sturdy, but we felt like kings of the world sitting up there." Adding a little humor or a specific detail, like, "The treehouse leaned to one side, so we always had to sit carefully," can make your story more engaging. Now let's consider how to keep the conversation going after sharing your story. You might follow up with a question like, "Did you have a favorite spot where you and your friends used to hang out?" This encourages the other person to open up and creates a dynamic exchange rather than a one-sided conversation. It's a powerful way to practice not only speaking but also listening and responding naturally. Let's look at another example, this time at a workplace. Suppose a colleague mentions a challenge they're facing with a project. You could say, "That sounds tough. I had a similar experience last year when we were trying to meet a tight deadline. We ended up splitting the tasks into smaller pieces, and it made things more manageable. Have you tried something like that?" This response not only shows empathy, but also introduces a constructive suggestion based on your own experience. The key is to keep the tone collaborative and supportive. Short stories can also be used to practice expressing emotions or opinions. For instance, let's say you're at a book club discussing a novel. You might share, "One part of the book really stayed with me. The protagonist's struggle to find their identity reminded me of a time when I was trying to choose a career path. It was such a confusing period, but looking back, it taught me a lot about myself." Did anyone else feel connected to that part of the story? This kind of response invites others to share their perspectives and deepens the discussion. Using phrases to agree or build on someone's statement can also enrich conversations. Imagine you're talking about travel plans with a friend, and they say, "I've always wanted to visit Italy." You could respond, "Italy is on my list too. I've heard the food is amazing, especially the pasta and gelato. Do you have a specific city in mind?" like Rome or Venice? This builds on their statement and adds energy to the conversation. Sometimes you may not have much to add to a topic, and that's okay. In such cases, asking open-ended questions can keep the conversation alive. For example, if someone is talking about their favorite hobby, you could ask, "How did you get into that? Was it something you've always loved? Or did you discover it later?" Questions like these show genuine interest and encourage detailed responses. Let's switch gears and talk about handling awkward silences in conversations. Imagine you're chatting with someone new, and the conversation starts to lag. A great way to break the silence is by introducing a light topic. You might say, "I read something interesting the other day about how people in different countries greet each other. Did you know that in Japan, people bow instead of shaking hands? It's fascinating how customs can vary so much." This not only fills the silence, but also invites the other person to share their thoughts or experiences. Another way to handle pauses is to use humor or make an observation. For instance, if you're at a party and notice someone looking at the food table, you could say, "That dessert table is tempting, isn't it? I'm trying to decide if I should go for the chocolate cake or the fruit tart. What do you think?" This kind of comment is lighthearted and easy for the other person to respond to. To practice conversational English further, let's think about a situation at a cafe. Suppose the barista asks you about your order. You could use this opportunity to practice describing your preferences. Instead of simply saying, "I'll have a coffee," you might say, "I'd like a medium latte with almond milk, please. Oh, and could you add a sprinkle of cinnamon on top?" Adding details not only makes your order clear, but also gives you a chance to use more descriptive language. If the barista replies, "We're out of almond milk. Would you like oat milk instead?" You can practice handling unexpected changes. A polite response might be, "Sure, oat milk sounds great. Thank you for letting me know." This shows flexibility and good manners, which are key to smooth conversations. Finally, let's explore how short stories can be used in casual settings to create connections. Imagine you're at a park and notice someone playing with their dog. You could say, "Your dog looks so happy. I used to have a dog named Max, and he loved running around the park. He always carried his favorite ball everywhere. What's your dog's name?" This kind of interaction is friendly, and the story adds a personal touch that makes the conversation memorable. Let's continue our conversation and explore even more ways to enhance your English learning with engaging and relatable situations. By using short stories, asking open-ended questions, and practicing real-life scenarios, you can improve your fluency and feel more confident while speaking. Imagine you're visiting a friend's house, and they invite you to stay for dinner. Instead of just saying thank you, you can build on the situation by saying, "I'd love to. What are you making? I'm always curious about new recipes, especially when it comes to cooking dinner for friends." This not only expresses enthusiasm, but also opens the door for further conversation. Your friend may share some details about the dish, and you can add to the discussion by talking about your favorite types of food or a recipe you've recently tried. This leads to a more engaging and natural exchange, where both people can share experiences and stories. If the conversation shifts to favorite movies or TV shows, you could contribute by saying, "I recently watched a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness, and it made me think about how important it is to keep going, even when things seem difficult. It reminded me of a time when I faced a challenge in my studies and thought about quitting, but I pushed through." Have you ever had a moment when you had to keep going even when it seemed tough? This not only gives you a chance to practice sharing personal stories, but also encourages the other person to reflect on their experiences. Building on this idea, let's consider how conversational English is often about connecting through shared emotions and situations. For example, you could ask someone, "Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a really quick decision?" I remember one time when I was in a foreign country, and I had to decide whether to catch a train or take a taxi. I didn't speak the language well, and I was so nervous, but I ended up taking the train, and it was a great experience. What about you? By sharing a personal story, you can make the conversation feel more authentic and comfortable. Stories also give you the opportunity to practice expressing emotions such as nervousness, excitement, or relief, which are all important aspects of conversational English. Now let's move on to a slightly different scenario, like discussing hobbies. This topic is an excellent opportunity to practice both speaking and listening. If you're talking with someone about their favorite hobby, you could respond with, "That sounds really interesting. I've always been fascinated by photography, but I'm still a beginner. I once took a picture of the sunset at the beach, and it turned out to be one of my favorite photos ever." What's your favorite thing to photograph? By adding details and sharing a story related to the topic, you not only keep the conversation going, but also show a deeper interest in the other person's passions. Another great way to practice your conversational skills is through everyday situations like going shopping. When you're at a store, instead of just saying, "I'll take that," you can practice forming more complete sentences like, "I'd like to buy this jacket, please. Do you have it in a different color?" This simple addition of a polite request helps you to sound more natural and fluent. If the shop assistant replies, "Yes, we have it in blue and gray," you can respond with something like, "I think I'll go with the gray one. It's perfect for the weather today." By adding these extra layers of detail to your sentences, you give yourself more chances to practice new vocabulary and phrases. If you're talking to a neighbor about the weather, you could try a more detailed conversation. "It's been so hot lately. Yesterday, I was walking in the park and I almost couldn't bear the heat. It got to about 35 degrees C and I had to find some shade. What do you usually do when the weather is this hot?" You've now expanded the conversation from just mentioning the weather to discussing what you did in response to it. This approach helps you practice not only vocabulary related to the weather, but also other expressions such as "bear the heat" or "find some shade." You're now engaging in a richer, more descriptive conversation. Another way to practice conversational English is to use small talk during casual interactions. Let's say you run into an old friend at a coffee shop. Instead of just saying, "Hi, how are you?" you can ask a more specific question, such as, "How have you been? Last time we talked, you mentioned you were planning a trip to New York. How was it?" This follow-up question shows that you remember what they said and makes the conversation more engaging. When they reply with their experiences, you can add your thoughts too. "That sounds amazing. I've always wanted to go to New York. What did you think of the food there? I've heard the pizza is the best." This kind of exchange keeps the conversation flowing smoothly. Additionally, practicing expressing opinions is crucial for conversational English. Let's say you're discussing a book with someone. Instead of just agreeing with what they said, you could offer your own perspective. "I totally agree with you about the main character. She's so relatable. But I also think she could have made better choices when it came to her career. Have you ever had to make a decision like that?" This shows that you're engaging critically with the conversation and encourages the other person to share their viewpoint as well. A good practice is also making observations about the environment or situation you're in. For instance, if you're attending a gathering and see that everyone is talking about a specific topic, you could contribute by saying, "It's funny how we all ended up talking about our childhoods today. It makes me realize how much of our past shapes who we are today. Did you have a moment in your childhood that really changed you?" This kind of observation can help deepen the conversation and give you the opportunity to practice expressing deeper thoughts in English. Lastly, in any conversation, it's important to show empathy and understanding. If someone is telling you about a challenge they've faced, you can say, "That sounds really tough. I can't imagine how stressful that must have been. When I went through something similar, I found that talking about it really helped. Have you found talking to others helpful?" This response not only shows empathy, but also offers your own experience, making the conversation more personal and meaningful. Through these various situations, you can practice many aspects of conversational English, from expressing emotions and opinions to asking engaging questions and sharing stories. The more you practice these kinds of exchanges, the more natural and confident you'll feel speaking in English. Let's delve deeper into mastering conversational English by practicing through relatable scenarios, meaningful stories, and practical phrases. The key to improving fluency lies in being able to connect naturally with others, so let's explore how to engage in richer conversations while learning useful expressions. Imagine you're at a cafe meeting someone new for the first time. Instead of simply saying, "Hello, nice to meet you," you can make the introduction more engaging by adding a bit of context. For example, you could say, "Hi, it's great to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you from Sarah. She mentioned that you're an avid traveler. I'd love to hear about your favorite trips." This approach not only makes your greeting warmer, but also opens the door for a conversation about travel. When they share their stories, you can practice active listening by responding with comments and questions like, "That's fascinating. I've always wanted to visit Thailand. Did you get a chance to explore the floating markets there?" This exchange allows you to practice showing genuine interest and using specific phrases that make your English sound more fluent and natural. Let's take another example of discussing hobbies. If someone tells you they enjoy painting, you could build on the conversation by sharing a related story. For instance, you might say, "That's amazing. My cousin is a painter too, and I've always admired how creative she is. She once painted a mural for a local library, and it turned out to be a community favorite." Do you have any particular style you prefer, like abstract or landscape? By weaving in a short story, you create a more dynamic conversation that invites the other person to share their experiences as well. Now imagine you're at a networking event and someone mentions their profession. Instead of just nodding politely, try engaging by saying, "Wow, working as a graphic designer sounds so interesting. I've always been curious about how you come up with ideas for new projects. Is there a specific process you follow to stay creative?" This not only demonstrates curiosity, but also provides an opportunity to learn new vocabulary related to their field. If the conversation turns to a lighter topic like weekend plans, you can share your own experiences to keep the dialogue flowing. For example, you could say, "This weekend I'm planning to visit a local farmer's market. I've heard they have the best organic produce and homemade baked goods. Last time I went, I tried this incredible apple pie that reminded me of the ones my grandmother used to make." Do you enjoy going to markets or trying new foods? This response not only adds detail to your story, but also includes sensory language, like describing the pie, which makes your English more descriptive and engaging. When discussing a shared experience, like attending a concert, you can practice expressing emotions and preferences. You might say, "That concert was unforgettable. I loved how the band interacted with the audience, especially when they played my favorite song. It felt so personal, like they were performing just for us." Do you have a favorite live performance you've been to? This allows you to use more expressive language while encouraging the other person to contribute to the conversation. Let's move on to a scenario where you're helping someone new to your city. Instead of giving short directions, you could say something like, "If you're heading to the museum, I recommend taking the scenic route through Elm Street. It's lined with beautiful trees, and there's a small cafe halfway where you can grab a quick coffee. When I first moved here, I took that path almost every weekend, and it became my favorite way to relax. Do you enjoy discovering new places like that?" This response not only provides useful information, but also shares a personal connection to the recommendation. In a classroom setting or language practice group, you could use hypothetical questions to encourage deeper conversations. For example, ask, "If you could live anywhere in the world for a year, where would it be and why?" When someone responds, you can add to the conversation by sharing your own thoughts, such as, "I think I'd choose Japan. I've always been fascinated by its culture, especially how they balance tradition with modernity. I'd love to experience the cherry blossom festivals and learn more about their way of life. What about you? What aspects of your chosen place appeal to you the most?" This type of exchange helps you practice expressing preferences and reasons clearly. Another valuable skill in conversational English is learning to handle compliments and give them in return. If someone says, "Your presentation was excellent," you could respond with, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate your feedback. I spent a lot of time practicing to make sure it was clear and engaging. Was there a part that stood out to you?" This not only shows gratitude, but also keeps the conversation going. Similarly, if you want to compliment someone, try to be specific. Instead of just saying, "You did a great job," you might say, "Your speech was so inspiring. I especially liked how you shared personal stories to illustrate your points. It made the topic feel so relatable. How did you come up with those examples?" By being specific, you encourage the other person to share more about their experience, which helps you practice active listening and follow-up questions. If you're discussing a common topic like food, you can make the conversation more engaging by adding cultural insights. For instance, "I've noticed that every culture has its own unique comfort food. In my country, it's a dish called biryani, which is a spiced rice dish with meat and vegetables. It's something we often have during celebrations. What's a comfort food from your culture, and when do you usually eat it?" This type of question not only broadens the scope of the conversation, but also introduces you to new vocabulary and cultural expressions. When talking about past experiences, try to include vivid details to make your stories more interesting. For example, "Last summer I went hiking in the mountains, and it was one of the most challenging yet rewarding experiences of my life. There was this moment when I reached the summit, and the view of the sunrise over the valley was breathtaking. I felt a sense of accomplishment that I'll never forget." Have you ever done something that pushed you out of your comfort zone? This approach allows you to practice using descriptive language and expressing emotions. Practicing conversational English is not just about speaking, but also about learning how to listen actively and respond thoughtfully. By using engaging questions, sharing relatable stories, and expressing your thoughts clearly, you can create meaningful connections while improving your fluency. Let's continue exploring these techniques to help you feel more confident in any conversational situation. Improving conversational English is a journey that thrives on stories, real-life applications, and relatable phrases. Let's dive deeper into the art of everyday conversations and how we can use storytelling and detailed expressions to practice effectively. At the airport, imagine you're at the airport, and someone approaches you asking for assistance. They say, "Excuse me, could you help me find gate 22? I think I'm a bit lost." Instead of giving a short reply like, "It's over there," you could say, "Of course. Gate 22 is in Terminal B. You can follow the signs overhead, but it's a bit tricky because you need to pass through the food court first. When I first came here, I got lost too because the signs weren't very clear. By the way, where are you flying to? Maybe I can guide you further." This response not only provides useful information, but also opens up the opportunity for a longer interaction. The person might reply, "I'm flying to Paris. It's my first trip there." You can practice your conversational skills by responding with enthusiasm. "That's wonderful. Paris is such a beautiful city. I visited last year and the Eiffel Tower at night is magical. Are you going for work, vacation, or something else?" This kind of follow-up question helps keep the conversation flowing and shows genuine interest. Talking about hobbies. Let's consider another scenario. You're at a gathering, and someone mentions their hobby of gardening. Instead of simply saying, "That's cool," you could expand the conversation by sharing a personal story. You might say, "That's amazing. My grandmother was an avid gardener, and I remember spending summers with her planting roses and vegetables. She always said, 'Gardening is like therapy for the soul.' Do you focus on flowers, or do you grow vegetables too?" This kind of detailed reply not only practices conversational depth but also introduces idiomatic expressions like therapy for the soul. If they reply, "I mainly grow vegetables because I love cooking with fresh ingredients," you can build on that with, "That's such a great idea. Fresh vegetables must taste so much better than store-bought ones. My friend grows tomatoes in her backyard, and she once gave me a basket of them. They were so sweet and juicy. I made the best pasta sauce ever." Do you have a favorite recipe you make with your vegetables? By connecting their hobby to a shared interest, you create a natural dialogue that improves your fluency. Ordering food at a restaurant now, imagine you're at a restaurant with friends, and you're responsible for placing the order. Instead of saying, "I'll have a burger," try expanding your request. "I'd like the cheeseburger with extra pickles, please. Could you also make the fries extra crispy? Last time I was here, I had the chicken sandwich, and it was fantastic, but I've been craving a good burger all week." By adding more detail, you're practicing how to make requests more natural and engaging. If the server responds, "Sure, we can do that. Would you like any sauce on the side?" Take this opportunity to ask questions. "Yes? Could I have some barbecue sauce, please? Also, do you recommend the vanilla milkshake or the chocolate one? I've heard your milkshakes are incredible." This helps you practice both asking and answering questions in a casual setting. Shopping at a market, picture yourself at a farmer's market. A vendor says, "Good morning, we have fresh strawberries today. Would you like to try some?" Instead of replying with a simple, "Yes," you can say, "Good morning, I'd love to try some. Strawberries are my favorite fruit, especially when they're fresh. My mom used to make the best strawberry jam when I was a kid, and these remind me of those times. Do you grow these locally?" This response uses descriptive language and connects the moment to a personal memory. If the vendor replies, "Yes, these come from our farm just 20 miles away," you could continue with, "That's wonderful. I really appreciate locally grown produce. Do you have any tips for keeping them fresh longer? I usually buy a lot, but they don't last more than a couple of days." This practice introduces conversational strategies like asking for advice and sharing personal experiences. Talking about the weather. Discussing the weather is one of the most common topics in English conversation, and you can make it more interesting by adding observations or stories. If someone says, "It's so hot today," instead of just agreeing, you could respond, "Yes, it feels like summer has arrived early this year. Yesterday I went for a walk in the park, and the heat was intense. But then, out of nowhere, a cool breeze started, and it felt so refreshing. Do you enjoy hot weather, or do you prefer cooler seasons?" This type of response helps keep the conversation engaging. If the other person replies, "I actually prefer cooler weather. Winter is my favorite season," you can continue with a story. "I love winter too, especially because of the holidays. Last year, my family and I went skiing in the mountains, and it was such a magical experience. We built a snowman and even had a snowball fight. Do you have any favorite winter activities?" Sharing such detailed anecdotes makes the interaction more dynamic. Asking for directions. Another scenario is asking for directions. Instead of a brief interaction, try extending it. For example, you ask, "Excuse me, could you tell me how to get to the train station?" And the person responds, "Sure, go straight for 2 blocks, then turn left." You could add, "Thank you so much. I'm visiting this city for the first time and I find it a bit tricky to navigate. Do you have any recommendations for places to visit near the station?" This opens the door to a richer conversation while learning about the city. They might reply, "There's a fantastic bakery near the station that has the best croissants. You should definitely check it out." You can then practice gratitude and enthusiasm. "That sounds amazing. I love trying local bakeries. Croissants are my favorite breakfast treat. Do they have any unique flavors, or should I stick with the classic?" This not only practices conversational phrases, but also builds your vocabulary around food and travel. By focusing on relatable scenarios, sharing personal stories, and asking thoughtful questions, you can significantly enhance your ability to engage in meaningful conversations. This practice not only helps with fluency, but also boosts confidence in speaking English naturally and effectively. Let's keep exploring more ways to master conversational English. To wrap up, remember that mastering conversational English takes time, patience, and consistent practice. By engaging in real-life scenarios, sharing personal stories, and asking thoughtful questions, you can make every interaction an opportunity to learn and grow. Whether you're at a market, in a restaurant, or chatting with someone about the weather, don't shy away from adding details, asking follow-up questions, and using descriptive language. The key is to enjoy the process and embrace every conversation as a step toward fluency. Keep practicing, stay curious, and remember that every word you speak brings you closer to mastering English. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to helping you improve in the next episode. Happy learning!